Hey guys, I haven't really made any videos on here. I've kind of lost my ability to contribute to truth um, for like months now. I think I just kind of feel stupid when I post something and it's just like what is this really? This is like a waste of time. But at the end of the day, if I can do a video that's just cathartic for me, then I guess it's worth something. So that's kind of what I'm doing now, but I am trying to communicate with some of you guys to, and that puts out a certain part of vulnerability for me to talk about my beliefs and expect to get feedback on that. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to get into it. Before this month, because it pretty much started November 1st for me, kind of. Before that, though, I was totally against COVID restrictions. Well, I mean, I am, but I was totally more against like COVID even being real. Like I was just like, people are having colds. People have colds. This happens, you know. Um, and people are just giving into this psychosis that the media has escalated. And I don't believe in that it's a threat at all. And I really still don't believe it's like a deathly threat because even their statistics, if I track it, it's somewhere like a 0.5% survival rate or mortality rate, whatever. And I mean, it's so low. And we're also talking about the multiple comorbidities or whatever. And like, it takes a lot. I know someone who died of COVID, but they had like a chronic lung disease. So it's one of those like, I think they were in their 60s, maybe early 60s, but like still, it's just like, got a chronic lung disease, you know. So in terms of a threat, I mean, my only perspective has changed a little bit because I got sick with COVID. So I'm just gonna briefly talk about that and how that went down. The first week in November, I got I got sick, and it was a weird sickness. It was. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's just a different version of a cold. I mean, it technically is, but um, I've never had congestion hit me like in my head way up here, if you can even call it that. Because and I mean I know it was congestion at the end of the day, but I tried everything for about 4 days. Because the first day was kind of like, oh, something's going on. It wasn't until the second day that I started trying to stop it. And I tried nasal rinses, which usually work with colds. They help. They do help. They release the congestion and whatnot. Um, I tried sitting over steam and long showers and Vicks vapor rubs and menthols and Sudafed, which usually works. Straight up Sudafed did not work. That's the pseudoephedrine, whatever, the decongestant. That usually works. This did not this time. So 5 days into this, and it's like 8 o'clock at night, I'm like dying. And I'm not saying dying like literally, but I feel just so awful. The congestion was so bad in my head that Tylenol, ibuprofen was not even eliminating the pain. There was just physical pain. Just it felt like just so much trauma to my head. And all the while, I could breathe through my nose. So it was just hitting me so severely that I was in physical pain. I could barely see. I was in and out of like consciousness, and I just couldn't. I'm like, okay, I guess I should face up that there's something here. I better go to urgent care. And then I had to bounce around a couple times, but long story short with that, I got they saw me, they tested me for COVID. Of course, it's the PCR test, which but for other reasons, I'm gonna say it was COVID. And again, give me your perspective on it. I know for me, I went into it just again thinking COVID wasn't real, but now I'm just kind of like what I experienced is different than anything I have before. which I hate saying that because I sound like everyone else that I was like, blasting about and saying they were hyping it up or whatever. But the next day though, so the Saturday 6th, I heard back that it was COVID, but again, PCR. So and then my parents had gotten sick. I lived with them, and they had gotten sick a couple days prior. And so and my sister had a rapid test, and my mom took it, and it was like definite COVID, it said. So we're kind of working on that assumption. When I went to the urgent care, they only basically, the thing, I guess the component I was missing is a nasal spray, which is Flonase, which I think is over the counter. But I still got a prescription. And then Zyrtec D, which is an allergy and a decongestant medication. And when I took that, that's when the congestions finally kicked out and started getting alleviated, which is weird. But I guess I needed that allergy medicine component as well. Um, so those combined, the nasal spray, Zyrtec D, got things flowing. And then the next week, I was kind of like, again, I'm having fever all the time too, and but I was in and out of fevers, and I was like clockwork. I would take Tylenol, my fever would go down, kind of normal, and then 5 6 hours after the Tylenol, my temperature would spike back up, and I did that for like basically another week of dealing with this. And I was feeling so run down, and I mean, I was in and out of consciousness again. I wasn't getting better. I thankfully proactively the second week was calling my main primary doctor, and he ended up, and then I started having more breathing problems. He's like, well, if you're gonna have shortness of breath or wheezing, then you need to be seen immediately. So I was getting scared because it was escalating to that, and by Thursday or Friday last week is when that actually started happening. That I would walk and I had to like actually catch my breath, and I was like, oh my god, like this is getting difficult. So I called them, and another long story short with that, um I've had an X-ray, chest X-ray, and of course they just said, the result just came up with, there's infiltrates in the lung or whatever, some kind of technical jargon. And it says query COVID status. It's like, okay, we already know it's COVID, so I want to know. So then I was pestering the doctor, and then they finally gave in and gave me antibiotics, amoxicillin, and then they gave me a steroid, dexamethasone. So I've been on those since for about a week, and I like instantly got better. So my theory is that the first week I had literally COVID. The decongestants I was taking, I think, just flooded my system, and then I got bacterial pneumonia. I think I'm fighting bacterial pneumonia at this point. But I'm not going to sit here and say that COVID didn't make way for that. I think it was because the amount of congestion that I had just overpowered my system, my lungs, and created that bad environment. So, but my parents apparently tested for pneumonia and they didn't have it. But anyway, so and they're not. I mean, my father's doing okay. My mother's not doing well. She's 68, and it has me worried. And again, before this, I was like this. I mean, she can make it through. The problem with my parents, both of them, is they're very stubborn and they don't treat. They try to like act like if they're sick, that they try to act like nothing's wrong. And my thing is like I think you can die of COVID if you literally don't do anything. So we're doing a lot to solve it. And so yeah, you kind of had to know that story because like before that though, I was like, COVID isn't real, it's not a threat. And now I'm sitting here, I just bought a box of fucking N95 masks, and I feel weird because I was so anti-mask. As soon as the restrictions let up, I mean, I already was rebelling with it last year, but as soon as restrictions let up, I was like, pff, and all those stupid signs, unvax still have to wear a mask. I was like, fuck that. But I really, for me, it's just during cold and flu season. I think my perspective right now is like, even in a truth perspective, where is the truth? When is it going to come down? When are we going to have results? Because if we're not going to, I'm kind of like just I need to do something to just calm myself and just get through this life. But I have a different, better perspective, I would say, in terms of focusing on what the real fight is, and that is the duality. And I think that that's what I'm trying to fight because we can sit here and say taking the vaccine is physically and spiritually and what's the other word I want to say? Freedomly. I can't think right now. Um, but for society's sake and future's sake and like there's a lot riding on giving into this vaccine. And there's but there's a lot of fearful people that want just the vaccine because they're just like, well, shit, I don't want this because I don't want to die or I don't want to hurt anyone, which is just a very ignorant stance. Like, I don't want to hurt anyone, but let me inject myself potentially with something harmful. Then you are a person, you're hurting yourself potentially and society as a whole for years to come. So, so there's that fear side, but there's also the fear side of not taking the vaccine. So many people coming up with these crazy like there's a tracker in it, there's a and who the fuck knows. But there is this fear because there's still an unknown. We don't really know what's in it. So that's duality. That's you're being fearful of not taking it because if you're looking at it practically, you could say most people don't have a problem when they take it. If most people had a problem, nearly most people having a problem with the injection, they wouldn't be they that would be it would be obvious. Just like if COVID was really a threat, it would actually be obvious. People would be dying everywhere. So on either side of that, no one's dying everywhere, but the vaccine, so basically, just for an example, I mean, I don't want it still. I still would want I just think there's something nefarious with the vaccine because um how badly they've pushed it and knowing how corrupt and how sinister. I'll use that loosely because I have an open mind with that, but I'm just saying the way they've pushed the vaccine is not genuine. And so therefore I look at that more high level and go, okay, there's something I don't want to partake in that yet. So that's just but yeah. But I have convinced one of my friends who's, we were both the same way with this whole thing. I convinced her not or I convinced her to get the vaccine, but it's because of let's take ownership of our life. Let's not be hypocrites here. Are we healthy people? Are we living off the grid? Are we being sovereign? No, no, no. We're lying to ourselves. I sit here on YouTube. I do a lot of research and I'm open-minded with truth. But at the end of the day, am I living off the grid? Like I just said all those things. No. Am I empowered? No. Am I empowering myself? No. I am making decisions, micro decisions, and I'm expecting macro results. And I think that's stupid. And in a way, wearing the masks just through the winter and just in like really heavy crowded areas and stuff, I think I'm gonna do that. Um, it's really punishing myself because I'm like, look, shit or get off the pot. Like if you're not going to do the things, you know, if you're not going to actually, did I garden? No, I made excuses, I guess. I didn't do that. I'm not self-sufficient. I still take prescription medications, and I'm allegiant to that because I know if I don't, it's just this society and this world is so sick. I don't even perceive there's a way to really change it. That I'm kind of moving now in this just moving along temporarily. Again, I'm not getting the vaccine. I'm very still against that and taking people's jobs away and for not doing it and blah blah blah. I get it, but at the same time, I'm just kind of like I want to focus on what matters. And to me, I'm just trying to say like there, like again, there's a fearful side, a duality side to me of not getting the vaccine or not wearing a mask because you're so scared of this agenda that they seem to have, but you don't even know really what the agenda is. So you're making up these beliefs based on a lot of unknowns. And I mean, yeah, granted, I just said, I think there's something nefarious and I'm going with it, but it's such a balancing act that this is just a new theory. And so that's what I'm here to say is that it's just looking up at me. It's nuts. Um, so and I just think that I'm just well, and I also was starting to get into this idea that um, you get sick. I got into watching like Amanda Vollmer for a little bit, and she's her big thing was like, you can't catch COVID, you can't catch a sickness. It's just your body basically detoxifying. And I was like, well, that's an interesting perspective. But I'm like, okay, so how do you explain that as soon as I get sick 2 days later, my both of my parents simultaneously get sick? Like, tell me that one. We're just not at the same cycle of detox. I don't think so. I think there's so much history to show that yeah, germs kind of exist. You can get sick. Contagions exist. Do I think that of course that the information is limited and there could be more components to that? Of course. But I'm not going to sit here and say now that like a mask won't help, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of this like I gotta find how to focus on being in a bliss state. I'll just use the Crystal Time, whatever her name is. I watch her videos. Sometimes she's talking about you have to be in this like bliss state. And my interpretation of that is is getting out of that duality and seeing how like a lot of this shit doesn't matter. And it's really that fight energy I just want to get out of. That fight energy is bringing us down. It's not moving us to a new world. It's not making us more loving. Fighting is what continues what we've been in forever, and if a lot of it is fake, then why the fuck does it matter if I wear a mask? So I'm just gonna do it. I don't care. I'm not gonna be like, you better wear a mask or you better be vaccinated. No, not anything like that. It's just that I'm just kind of like, I gotta just do something to. I don't know. Part of me has just given up. It's just like I've given up. I've been on a truth journey for 5 solid years, it feels like at this point. Pretty much. Because it was that 2016 election that really broke the mold in my brain. And that's when I stopped working. And then I started looking into things. And um, in 5 years, it's just like tangibly, my life is not seemingly better. So I don't know. I just feel very weird. Um, and I'm just saying, like, for now, I'm focused on just not being fearful. I'm focused on not being fearful. Is wearing a mask fearful? In my experience at this point, no, because I just don't want to be sick again. I mean, this technically is my third. I had a couple other little minor colds or something for the last couple months, and then this hit, and I'm like 3 weeks in, and I'm seeing my mom struggle through it, and I'm just kind of like, I just don't want to deal with it for months. And that's not to say I'm not gonna get sick again, but I don't know. So my mind's just a mess right now because it seems like that's what life has done for me very much in the last couple of years. Is I'll be on this trajectory and then something will happen and then I'll like just it'll flip. Before COVID, I was starting to get away from truth. It was COVID stuff that made me get back into truth. And then people I was following, politicians and stuff, and commentators, I stopped cold turkey with COVID because it was just such a revealing moment. And it was very reminiscent of 2016, where like you're believing one thing and then your whole world flips. So I think that's just the reality now. It's so topsy turvy. And for me, I'm just like, okay, how do we just not focus on that? You can't have topsy turvy if you're not in duality. you know? So it's like, guess I'll just wear the mask. I don't care. How is that affecting anyone else? So what if I eventually get the vaccine? I had so many vaccines this year just to catch up on stuff. I went to a health clinic and got several like you have to do like several doses of like I think it was HPV or hepatitis and tetanus, meningitis. I did a bunch of them, and I know that those are different, but still, I'm not like I don't know. It's just I guess I just wanted to express that my I do think at the end of the day that the biggest truth is getting out of that duality, and that I think we have to choose to be happy. We have to rise above being dictated by our whims and dictated by our shadow self, our dark things that we suppress and our insecurities, and we have to just look at that for what it is and just be mature about it and make just choices and like I just because I was miserable the other day and I was just like no, I actually finding that power, that is the biggest thing that I've found in the recent like year, is finding that power that like you can choose your emotion. Once you understand your shadow and that duality, you can just be like, no, I'm just going to be happy right now. Like, why do I have to be sad? Who am I being sad for? Is it being sad to motivate myself to be happy? Does that really work? No, because it just doesn't. I'm not going to try to sit here and explain that, but it just doesn't. It's demotivating to be sad. So it can be, of course, sadness is different also than depression and anxiety, but so yes, and in being forgiving of your sadness, that's fine. That'll help you flow through it. But at some moment, it's like you just gotta choose to be happy and be in bliss, and there is a specific. This isn't just in my head, but there is a specific empowered feeling that comes from like my chest. I can feel it, and it's just kind of like wow, yeah, I am a sovereign person. I am my own person, and I am starting to make choices. It's crazy because I feel like mentally and emotionally the last few years I've been evolving very very quick, and it has taken so much, and it's only now that I'm starting to get that like actual feeling of empowerment that I can choose my life and choose my emotions, because it's like we are these like gods. We are our own gods of our life, and it's very very empowering. I can't explain it more than that, other than it is a specific feeling. It's not head, it's not even emotion, it's this matured heart or something that's finally happening, and that's the only way I can describe how to get out of that duality. So for me though, it's like okay, well, we still live in this 3D world. So if I wear a mask, I do I feel I'm contributing? I'm just like no, I just don't. It's not what matters. It's kind of the same thing in a weird way. Just gonna throw it out there with politics. You've got the Republicans and the Democrats. You got the conservatives and the liberals and the red and the blue, and that's the duality. But then you go, where's the middle ground here? Where it's like, oh, corruption. We can agree on that. There's a lot of corruption and lies. What happened to Epstein? Like that's like my biggest thing. I'm always harping on. I'm always like, isn't it funny? As soon as like Epstein got arrested, like COVID became a thing, and then as soon as he died, then it was like, and then it came out in ways that like of course he was tied to all these people that like oh, and then the shutdowns happened. Isn't it just weird that the biggest crime ever is equally being distracted by with COVID? So there are these like middle ground political issues that is to me just as an example of not being in the duality, because you literally don't have to fight about Black Lives Matter, LGBT, and you don't have to you don't have to fight about all that stuff and abortion and blah blah blah. Like you just don't even, because there's something way more at stake for all of us. So I guess that's kind of it's an example of getting out of that duality. So that is my focus. And to me, it's like wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, getting the vaccine at this point, maybe, and not getting it. I think, again, yeah, like my brother says that when he had the vaccine, half of his body had paralysis for a day. And my brother-in-law claim, and my brother, and then my brother-in-law claims that he's got rheumatoid arthritis that came pretty much soon right after he had the vaccine. I've heard other uh, anecdotal stories from people of paralysis or just a real. My sister also, one of my sisters, had to go to the emergency room a couple times, but now she's kind of saying, well, it's probably just a panic attack, and that's kind of inconclusive. So I'm going to say, there are practical reasons to not get it for sure. But like I was saying, like my friend, I convinced her because, it's a little too late. You're an alcoholic, you're on 3 heart medications, you're overweight. I would just get the vaccine. I would rather roll the dice in that sense, because what I went through, it was very difficult. Again, part of that was my stubbornness. So just let me know if I'm in the wrong here. I would definitely interested in people's perspective. I know I'm not like a highly contributor in truth. Um, I just That's just what I'm on right now.